So today's book is George Washington Carver. This is another nonfiction text about a real person, okay? George Washington Carver. So here we have our table of contents right here. Okay, so born a slave. George Washington Carver was born in Missouri in 1864 during the Civil War. Because his mother was a slave, he was born a slave too. And it says, this picture says states where Carver lived and worked: Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Alabama. Carver grew up in Missouri, studied in Kansas and Iowa, and worked in Alabama. And then here is a reminder that the Civil War was a fight between two sides of the United States, the North and the South. When it began, slavery was legal in 15 slave states in the South and illegal, which means it could not happen, in 17 free states in the North. After the North won the war, the slaves were freed. When the Civil War ended, George became free. He stayed with the people who owned him, Susan and Moses Carver. Susan taught George to read and write. More than anything, he liked to garden and explore the world outside, learning on his own. George taught himself about plants and animals. He wanted to go to school to learn more. In many places, black and white students could not attend the same schools. George could not go to the school nearby when he was black. When he was 12, he left home to go to another school. A year later, he left for Kansas. When George finished high school in Kansas, he tried to go to college there. Once he arrived, though, the college told him he had to leave. It did not allow black students. He didn't give up, though. Instead, he went to college in Iowa. There, George learned all about farming. He was the first black student to finish and become a professor at his college. A professor is the word that they use for teacher when you're in college. You're a professor. In 1896, Carver went to Alabama helping the poor farmers there. These farmers had a big problem. Their cotton crops were smaller every year, so farmers had less and less money. Crops are what grows on a farm. It could be corn, if you have corn on your farm, and you would call it corn crops. Carver knew that growing the same crop again and again had worn out the soil. He taught farmers to add dead leaves and plants to the soil to help it. He also taught them to plant sweet potatoes, peas, or peanuts. These crops put things back into the soil that the plants needed to grow well. And this says, children helped pick cotton on a Mississippi plantation in the late 1800s. Farmers needed a way to sell these new crops. Carver invented more than 100 ways to use sweet potatoes and 300 ways to use peanuts. New uses meant new products. New products meant new items for farmers to sell. The truth about peanut butter. Carver invented up to 300 uses for the peanut: pavement, grease, medicines, peanut coffee, peanut mayonnaise, peanut flour, peanut milk, shoe polish, bleach, sandpaper, and more. Contrary to popular belief, however, he did not create peanut butter. A Native American tribe is known to have eaten a paste made from peanuts more than 500 years ago. It wasn't as creamy as the tasty goo we eat today, though. Ideas are free. In 1921, Carver was asked to speak for 10 minutes before the United States Congress, or the U.S. Congress, the country's lawmakers. Some of them didn't want him to speak because he was black. After his 10 minutes, however, they asked him to speak more. In the end, Congress passed a law to help U.S. peanut farmers. Carver became very famous, and crowds gathered to hear him speak. He could have made lots of money, but he thought helping people was more important. He believed ideas should be free and freely given. And this picture says, once Carver became famous, he met other famous men. Here he stood with Henry Ford, founder of Ford Motor Company in 1938. So, like Ford is the kind of cars. A lasting message. George Washington Carver believed that people should treat each other with respect. In time, he won the respect of a whole country. Carver also believed that people should care for the earth. If they did, Earth would provide what they needed. Now, many years later, we are learning that he is right. So here's our glossary. These are words that you can all go back and find in the text. It says which page it is on here. Crops, plants grown for food or other uses, the amount of plants or plant products gathered in one season. Famous means well known. Invented means created, designed, or built something that did not exist before. Professor, a college or university teacher. Slave, a person who is legally owned and completely controlled by another person. Soil, the top layer of the ground in which plants grow, and it's also dirt. All right, that's our text today for George Washington Carver.